Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed. Now, over my journey in the podcast, I've always speculated where Assassin's Creed could go next. Now, all these speculations are just what I call future titles. But in this episode, I'm going to do something different. And it's going to be a very spoiler-heavy episode, because I will be making some callbacks to Valhalla's ending, and some callbacks to some of the older games. But in this episode, I essentially just want to say what I believe the next game should be or will be a Mayan themed game. But I'm not alone in this episode. I'm not going to be badgering on myself about Mayans and their notorious timeline and how it could fit. I'm also joined by Jarrett from the Bleeding Effects podcast.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Glad to drag you back on.
Glad to be here.
So, let's get a little tidbit of information out there, as we've discussed briefly. Why did I choose Mayan? And I chose Mayan because it came to light that Assassin's Creed 2 was meant to be a Mayan game. Did you read the full article to that?
No, I didn't. I think I heard about it via you, so
Yes.
I haven't seen. Okay. Actually, yeah. Okay, you sent the article to me, and I looked at it, and it was pretty much like one of the developers was kicked off and ticked off, so he went to go work on another project, and then he said that whatever project he was working on with his other company. What was it? Deus, that game series, Deus something. I
Deus
haven't played it.
Ex.
Deus Ex, yeah, Deus Ex. Okay, so apparently, like one of those titles that he was working on was supposed to be an Italian Renaissance theme, and when they came up with Ezio and the Italian Renaissance theme for Assassin's Creed 2, he was like, "Hey, they stole my idea for this game," and I was just like, It seems like reaching to me, but I haven't seen enough evidence, like in that article, to prove to me, oh yeah, Ubisoft totally ripped off this guy's idea. That was the thing that stood out as far as like the mind thing. Like, does he have anything to back that up, or is it just kind of hearsay?
I will admit I searched far and wide and I couldn't see anything to back it up. I just wanted to bring it up because if it's true, Mayans could have already been a part of Assassin's Creed lore before they were introduced into transmedia and the later games like Revelations and Liberations and Black Flag. So just wanted to kick off because if Assassin's Creed 2 was a Mayan game, it would have been really cool to see how the gameplay would have worked instead of having it now where it'd be more open worldy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was still kind of stuck on like the fact that, okay, so by more open worlds or like less open worlds, are you saying that they would have just had less locations to branch out to, or just less side missions?
I was more going down the route of less complications. With Assassin's Creed 3 and how the map was based, getting from sorry, I've had a bit of a cold this week.
You're good.
Getting from A to B via traversal in the parkour, traversal in the mountains was very easy. The frontier, but if you look at the traversal and the parkour in Valhalla, Origins, and Odyssey, it's kind of a bit weighty. So an RPG Mayan game, you'll need to have very smooth tree and environmental parkour. You'll have to have a lot of locations where the high trees or high temples are sync points, so you can dive off into leaves or lakes. So being an Ezio type game back on that generation, mine would work more because the hardware wasn't as strong, so they could have focused on smaller areas. Now with SSD technology and how big and powerful next gen is, Mayan open world can be a bit tricky if you get the traversal wrong.
Yeah. I was going to ask you because it's been a long time since I played Assassin's Creed Black Flag. I was just looking up some videos in Ought to Buy to see if there was any huge things towards the Mayan lore that I missed in that. But all I could find was like pretty much the sequence of events dealing with the leader of the, what is it, the Caribbean assassins, or what did they call him, the West Indies assassins, Atabai. All I could find was, yeah, pretty much just all of the interactions that Edward Kenway had with him, and also like I don't know what uh I can't remember what the map was like in. I know it focused on the Caribbean, and you went to Jamaica and Cuba and mostly like those different Caribbean islands, but I don't know. I don't know if you go to the Yucatan Peninsula, and if you're at like Chichen Itza in the game Black Flag, because you were talking about how like the different stelae and the pyramids would be sync points, and it's, I'm trying to think like was one of those already a sync point in Black Flag?
I don't think the location of the observatory in Black Flag was a Mayan temple, but I don't remember the observatory having a viewpoint itself. I think it was on the island, but it was up a tree, not on the Mayan temple, if I remember correctly.
Which island was it on?
I can't actually remember. I did have the notes, but I had the notes somewhere. I've got a lot of notes for this episode, but trying to think now. I think it was on one of the very bottom islands, near the Grand Iguana.
Like,
Oh, um,
what's it called? French Guiana? Like over closer to South America?
I think so. I think it's like the Cuba way. I had it on the notes. It's see, this is the problem with computers, people. Notes are not very good. Definitely not good. I know. I can't remember. I think it was Pirate Alonso Batalla collected cleanstones from Mayan temples in the Caribbean, but that's all I can remember. There's a Mayan stele around the Caribbean which helps unlock the Mayan armor at the Vault Tulum as well. So Black Flag did have a lot of Mayan influences and locations.
Yeah, I honestly felt like that was my favorite part of Black Flag. I've still been meaning to go back and replay that. I've replayed almost every other Assassin's Creed game like twice just to catch back up on stuff that I missed. But Black Flag hasn't. I haven't reached Black Flag yet because I think I was just going through the Liberation. I made it through that and then I stopped to do Valhalla. But so pretty much just confirms that what my initial thought was, they didn't delve too deeply into the Mayan lore for Black Flag, so it's still something that can be fresh to the audience when they go and view that, because it'll be totally different locations mostly.
Um, Pretty much yes. I think I do know that a lot of the Mayan lore for Assassin's Creed has been discussed, I believe, in Transmedia, but it's also been in Project Legacy, which was that Facebook game, and Liberations, the Pirates game, which was the mobile, and the Assassin's Creed 3, The Ruins of Syros, which is a DLC. So there has been, and we do know in the lore that it was during the Age of Discovery of 1715 when the Mayans actually sided with the Assassins, because it was during that time the Assassins and Templars decided to go explore as much as they could. And during that time, the Aztecs and Maya did come in contact with the Assassins during 1715. And we know that, I think it was 1744, the sword of William Kidd was found in the ruins of Syros in modern day Belize before being recovered by Connor. And so there is some lore there for Mayan, but as you said, it's not a lot. They do have different locations. The only issue is, as I've just mentioned now, with Edward finding keystones to the Vault of Tulum in the 18th century, with Everline finding parts of the Prophet Disc in 1772, and Connor finding a Mayan sword in 1774, you don't actually have a huge time window to play with. You have from 1715 to 1772 to make a game that will fit in with the assassin lore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, or they could go before the assassins landed in. They could go and just make it like an independent story, like a story independent of European influences, where they haven't joined the Assassin Brotherhood, but they brought up a different creed that has similar into values and makes it uh, easier for the assassins to kind of collaborate with them when they're introduced, because they have already like similar mindset, if that makes sense. I
That
could
does make sense,
I
yeah.
could see them doing something like that, and then you would have, because to have what when my research to looking up stuff, to have a game that's you want the Mayan civilization and like the in the height of its flourish, in the height of its what's the word I'm looking for, just just where they're well, I think crap, sorry,
It's
at the
notes are
height of their
confusing.
civilization, where they're in less decline, you want to go into the classic period, which is marked between like 250 AD and 950 AD, or the post classic, which is like 950 AD to like before the Spanish arrived. Um, what I have here, 1539. I can't remember what it was saying, the date of like the first conquistadors in landing in Mexico was, um, because like Columbus landed in Colombia, right, in South America.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would have been that would have been like in the 1500s, I think. My histories, I see. I skipped over some some really crucial things when I was looking up different stuff, but I had this planned out. What I'm basically trying to say is that you could have a game set in the classic or post-classic period of the Mayan civilization, where your protagonist is brought up in these societies, and there's a similar organization to, let's say, the cult of Cosmos, that exists in kind of like feeds off of the people, uh because they were talking about in the different videos that I was watching, it talked about how the Mayan Empire declined well before the Spanish came in, which, I mean, it was helped along by the Spanish coming in, and before they could even conquer the Maya, their diseases made it to the Maya civilization before they did, and so they're pretty much already cold enough to be conquered, to have the Spanish conquer their cities before then. But what what a lot of the research was turning up was the fact that, due to okay, so with the Maya, there was, like, in that pre-classic period, there was a southern lowland civilization in the areas, main cities like Tikal and Palenque. That was kind of where they had established their base, their roots, like all the way in the middle of the jungle, and kind of landlocked there. Um, and they had changed the jungle. They had kind of like slash and burn technique to do like their whole agriculture civilization set up in the middle of the jungle. And then when a drought came in, because of them cutting down all the jungle, it led to soil erosion, which kind of caused their civilization to decline rapidly, like in the classic, it was in the classic period, yeah. um, and then so they eventually had to migrate over to like the northern lowlands, which is where, more closer to the map of Black Flag, where you're right on the Yucatan Peninsula, and then you have Chichen Itza and Mayapan and Uxmal. So you could have a scenario set up where um, it wasn't just the drought, but apparently, like the drought was blamed on the rulers because of their connections with the Maya gods. That they should have done something or done more sacrifices, or in any case, like appealed to the gods to stop this from happening. And when they couldn't stop it from happening, they were pretty much pointed out as frauds and charlatans, and like they uh, I think what they're saying is scholars suspect this happened because, unfortunately, due to the Spanish missionaries, there's not a whole lot of records to go on. But they speculate that like a lot of revolutions would have happened, and I feel like just based on the recipe in prior games and everything, where there's like a revolution happening um, the to overturn the current ruling power, there's room for like an assassin kind of protagonist in there. So you could build a storyline out of that and say like what happened to the Mayans before the Europeans came in, and also or it doesn't have to be like a Mayan game. It could be an Aztec game. I wanted to point out when you were saying that the second game was initially planned to be a Mayan game, that one of the things that I was looking at early on when me and Tiffany were doing research into starting our podcast, we were talking about how um, the initial assassins were based on the Levantine Brotherhood of Assassins was based on the original Hashashin, and their base of operations was called Alamut, which is I guess the equivalent of Masyaf. I have to look back at see what it is, but because Masyaf might have been another location, but I think it did say that the assassins were based in Alamut. And the funny thing about Alamut is that it was built by a ruler in 865 AD who saw on a hunting trip, he saw an eagle perch on a rock. Now, that's similar to the basis of the Aztec civilization known as Tenochtitlan, because when those people first came into central Mexico and they set up their city on an island in the middle of a lake. It was set up where they saw an eagle land on a cactus with a snake in its mouth, and we already know the significance of eagles to Assassin's Creed. So that leads me to think like if like I'm just kind of wondering why would they do Mayan instead of Aztec if you have this eagle symbolism like transferring easily from across cultures. I think they would prefer to do that instead because you already have like the roots of like the eagle in there. And I don't know if there's any Aztec eagle gods. I know that in the Mayan mythology there's a macaw god, a god called Seven Macaw, but um I was trying to think of like how could that work its way into like the whole uh eagle lore and everything, but uh I went in so many different directions to try to think of like how they could flesh out this game. I didn't want to. I don't know what we have time for today to go into, but there was just a few theories I was thinking on like how they could make this game work. Um, Sorry, back over to you, Colin.
I think
I
for
called
me,
you Colin. Damn, Declan.
it's fine. I think for me, the Aztec game idea is a perfect one, and the symbolism is as strong as the eagle skull in Origins.
Mhm.
But the reason why I think the Mayan gravitates more logical or more perfect for Assassin's Creed sequel to Valhalla is Basim himself. And the reason why I'm saying Basim himself is because if we quickly go into Project Legacy, we know that we have Gonzalo Guaro, who was shipwrecked in 1511 into Mayan culture in Yucatan, and he lived there, but he was also there when the Spanish invaded with Herman Cortez and helped translate for them, so he could be like a pseudo assassin. And I believe it would be a fun little fact for, I'm going to say Sean, not William Miles, for a reason for Sean to challenge Basim as the first living Sioux that they've discovered. Why did the humans know about 2012 if that was meant to be a simulation projection from Isu. And I think Basim could challenge that by telling him about an Isu called Itzamna, which is actually a Mayan deity who is known for, well, who's credited for bringing the knowledge of the calendrical system to ancient ancestral Maya. So it would make sense for Sean to be having this discussion, and then Basim trying to be all high and mighty as Isu to be like, hey, well, we did it because an Isu rebelled. Itzamna felt sorry for humans, sympathized with their cause, and broke the simulation to try and spread a message in the future. Just how Juno and I forgot her name spoke to Ezio, through the apple. It
Uh,
would be
Not Aletheia, right? That was Athena, right?
yeah,
Or
it was
Minerva.
Minerva. That's one. Minerva, and the way Minerva talked to Ezio for the apple, it'd
Mm-hmm.
be a cool little fact for Basim to try and get cocky and try and break the animus to go back to show a memory of Itzamna, but it could break the animus. You know how they try and force Desmond in Assassin's Creed 1 into all the memories?
Mm-hmm.
At the very beginning, the whole system crashes and they have to gradually get Desmond used to LTA's memories. It could be a similar system that Basim tries to force these memories that are not his own. He doesn't own these memories, he's just trying to force the animus to live a memory that he hasn't got data for. So they then have to latch onto a source that they know of. So maybe they've got DNA of Gonzalo Guaro on file, or
Mm-hmm.
Jimeno de Aglia on file that they could access. And maybe during their time, which according to the Mayan civilization 1511, they did try and help resist Spanish rule in Yucatan. So if we played him himself or somebody that knows Guaro, then Basim could slowly work his way into getting the Animus to slowly introduce memories of Itzamna, of giving the calendrical system memories, just like the truth file in Valhalla, if that makes any sense.
Man, I was following along pretty closely there. Um, I'm so far behind what my where my knowledge goes as far as like the whole what we know is within E2 capabilities and everything, because I played through all the main games and everything, but from what I'm hearing, like you had you had Andrew on from the Visions of the Past podcast the other week, and he's read all the comics, and I think has he read all the novels? I'm not sure. Um,
I'll have to ask him.
yeah, because I think I learned through him about, or I think I learned through him about like the whole Phoenix project they had and everything. Because I know one of the things that made me start my podcast was I'm curious as to how um, the Animus technology was evolving and coming along, and it led to it, and it started to lead to like different um, ancestors and different civilizations being touched on because they find different people around the world. Like when did that start? Uh, when they started when they started being able to tap into like people's DNA just through different like game consoles that they would buy or something. It wound up like somehow being able to tap into people's minds around the world, and then they could more easily locate their missing artifacts in the DNA of whoever was logging in. I think I don't know if they had that kind of power, but it seems to me that in one of the comics established they did, because I thought that was in the whole Assassin's Creed Brahmin comic. I thought that's what they were talking about, was that that could happen if you just wound up, because back then, like I think the PlayStation VR just came out, and so the comic did their version of that, the Abstergo VR thing, and the guy had like a VR on his head, and it wound up like showing him memories of his girlfriend's ancestor or something who came into contact with the Kohinoor. It's been a while since I've read that, but um, in my mind, I was just thinking like, it is it a struggle for Abstergo anymore to just find whoever's memories they need to locate these artifacts. I guess like some things are like so far repressed that you couldn't just like at a glance find someone's deeply buried ancestral memories. You'd have to go and like pull them in and then just stick them in a animus for weeks and try to harvest that uh, information. But I don't know.
It's a hard one because Assassin's Creed started to play fast and loose with the memories, with the Phoenix Project, and then um, Project Legacy, and everything just trying to assuming that you can locate memories even if you don't have ancestral links. And um, the Project Legacy of Giovanni Borge, which is one that told us about Guatemala, was from a data dump scanner for Project Legacy, I believe. This was time period 1520, so there is lore there, but it's a new world plundered 1570, and it's all about his journey and how he ends up becoming a Mayan lord after being shipwrecked. So there is a whole legacy lore on it. There's quite a lot, so I don't think they could follow it word for word while breaking lore, but they could do something side by side, because if Project Legacy is canon, they could just take the data dump scan for that and put it into the Animus, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's very complicated what the Animus can do, and this is the problem for future games. That even though for what we've discussed, it is possible for the Mayan game to be the next game, but since Layla developed the Animus did not need to be a genetic memory holder, so she could technically live Ezio's life, she could live Altea, she doesn't have to be blood related. But with Basim now being living Isu, and technically the Isus are the one who invented the Animus system. It wasn't how it is now, but they did invent it through the simulation system. I couldn't see it being a too far stretch that Basim tinkering with it to try and break it to do something it's not meant to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. He has the knowledge and the means, being from a prior civilization that kind of already developed similar technologies. I guess he could just, uh, like you say, tweak it into doing whatever he needs to. Um, so back to what you were saying about Basim. Okay, so what you're saying for a sequel game, it could wind up being that Sean, it could begin as a dialogue between Sean and Basim about how we already knew about the 2012 solar flare, and then him pointing out that it was an Isu named what was the name?
Um, where's it gone? Sorry for butchering the names. It's Amna.
Itzamna. Yeah. So he could point out that Itzamna was rebelling against the Isu by feeding the knowledge into humans that this impending doom is coming. Um, I think that could work. I was confused about, but they got that information about that impending solar flare coming from was it Juno or Minerva?
Technically,
It was from Minerva first, and then Juno kind of like gave them information in the temple, and based on like her little snippets of dialogue that she had, I thought it was because they had reached their peak capacity of their technology and couldn't do anything to prevent it, and just kind of like let it pass down to humans. Like at that point, I thought all Isu were on board with, yeah, it's up to the humans to save the planet now because going to have they're going to have another disaster and we're all already dead.
I think my logic is, and I could be wrong, is that how do I word it? When the turbo catastrophe struck, it seems that the Isu tried to cheat death with the sage mechanic, sage system,
Mm-hmm.
but it also is wise enough to believe that due to being 90% of the population being wiped out, not a lot of people would have memory to remember that they need to stop the disaster, which is why a lot of temples have been left, where there's lots of artifacts that people have discovered, King Arthur wielding the Sword of Eden and stuff like that. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem like it was intended, but how the timeline of the first to the third game goes, that follows the month to 2012, and it seems common knowledge in the game that the whole world knows about 2012, and it's very commonly known that this was come from the Mayan calendar expiring. So it seems that as it's all focused on one civilization knew about it. 2012 is known as the Mayan calendar's end date, and it
Mm-hmm.
all backs down to the Mayan calendar. To ignore that link and ignore the deity Itzamna, who is credited with knowledge of the calendrical system to ancestral Mayan, to ignore that is kind of unfair, if that makes sense. Even if you do want to say, well, Minerva and Juno in previous games told Ezio about it, so they told William Miles and they told the teams, that's why they stopped it. But it doesn't answer to the rest of the world. How did the rest of the world know that the Mayans predicted 2012? If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say that in game it seems that no one's doing anything. If they know something's going to happen, no one's doing anything to prevent it. But I guess they don't have the clue as to what is going to. Even though if you look at that calendar, it's got a big sun in the middle of it. Like that would pretty much tell the story, I guess. But oh gosh, I'm just going round and round abouts of confusion. I think I had a point that I was going to make, and I just kind of lost it because um,
I think the point is, in my opinion, that we're humans. In human nature, if someone tells you that the end of the world is tomorrow, you're not going to believe it. Whereas the Book of Revelations has been out for thousands of years, and that predicts the seventh seal will get broken, and the seventh horn will sound, and the Son of Christ will rise again.
mhm.
But you don't see people running around screaming when 2012 first
Yeah, most
loomed.
people don't.
Most people, when 2012 first loomed, I don't remember seeing people around my town running around crazy. I was like, crap, is this real? We are gonna die.
Mhm.
But not a lot of people were. So I don't actually think if we used in-game logic, I don't think humans would have took this prophecy so serious, because how can such an ancient civilization predict something that's going to happen thousands of years ahead? It's fictional. It's not
Mhm.
logical. So it's why I kind of think if they all try to send it on Mayan, I think it could be explained why nobody did anything, because if I left a text message on a slab in the 15th century saying 2020 will have a pandemic, do you really think the world would be like, right, 2020, we better prepare for that pandemic that a civilization told us about 2,000 years ago?
Yeah, and I think with a lot of things, like with a lot of discoveries on ancient civilizations and their prophecies or warnings, we're lucky to encounter them. And with a lot of things, kind of in the archaeological field being speculated to be fakes and everything, I think there's like room for speculation that someone, if you did find something that did predict the 2012 pandemic, it could easily be written off as like a faked artifact or something. Uh, I think there's a whole bunch of room for skepticism in what they do on a daily basis. So, or that they interpret the hieroglyphs incorrectly because they're the knowledge of that language is so like a lot of it's lost. And from what I gathered, like especially like the Mayan language, they have to rely on the different codices that are in that happen to make their way out of that happen to make their way past the missionaries. And also, what I was looking into was some of those codices were made like post classic. The events that they chronicle and catalog and the different stories are all written post Spanish invasion. So they were written like I think a lot of people were saying that. I think one of the people who posted a video or one of the articles that I read, I wish I could cite sources for people right now, but I know you'll find it if you look it up. One of them said that these codices were written by Maya peoples who were kind of under the protection of a Christian priest who did believe in like preserving um, their culture for posterity reasons and not burning them because they're works of the devil and everything. So that's how some of Mayan, that's how some people, that's how archaeologists nowadays are able to unlock some of the messages on the hieroglyphs because they have some clues as to like the language system that they're able to comprehend and understand now. So yeah, like a lot of room for speculation on the whole, the way the calendar is interpreted and everything. Um, I think uh, I think it's also the fact that we are looking at everything through a lens that the Isu pretty much governed the whole globe before before the dawn of uh, the human race, as far as we know it. So, like a lot of things that they knew and they put up were lost to us, or just kind of hidden away by more powerful organizations, for their own gain. So, uh, like all these things you got to take into account, like as far as like why isn't it common knowledge that um, that these things existed yet that the game can play with in order to make a new story out of.
And that's what it's about. It's about the game trying to find ways of interpreting history. We know that history has been manipulated by Templars and Assassins for years, and I'm saying Assassins because it's just a matter of time before something's covered up. We know that in Valhalla, Vikings didn't technically discover Vinland when Eivor did, but this game was still able to go there because nobody wrote about it. You can't say something didn't happen if you didn't write about it. Conan Doyle always has that famous saying, which I just butcher because of my dyslexia, but if you take something away and what's left, no matter how improbable or impossible, must be the truth. And I think that's the same with history and memories that Assassin's Creed can follow. Just because something isn't documented, does something isn't set in stone, doesn't mean it didn't happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think where you're going with that, and it does make sense what you're saying, that like a lot of things that people write off as speculation, uh, because they can't be proven, aren't necessarily false because you don't have proof for them. I'm thinking with a lot of things that are probable, that people are that scholars are able to write off, because there's no substantial proof for them. I think like they didn't just come out of thin air, right? They didn't just decide that, oh, one day someone, back before we had all this technology with our boats and ships, that someone was able to travel all across the globe before before most civilizations were able to travel, um, to their neighboring country across a large body of water. The For them to come to that conclusion, like it's like a puzzle piece they have to put together. They see artifacts from like another civilization in a different place, and like how did they get here? And then they kind of, the speculation that they have is like the missing puzzle piece in between. That's where all their theories go, as far as to like what ties this together, what are the probabilities um of these two things being linked. Like if someone were to look at different Native American carvings or different artwork, artifacts, style of clothing, anything, and say, wow, this looks very Asian, or this resembles different peoples in the northern, uh, like in the Russian areas or the Siberian areas, and everything. And then, they're like, how did this get over here? And then suddenly they look at the geography in between Russia and Alaska and figure out that, theorize that there must have been like a land bridge there, and then it's dismissed and ridiculed for several several years or decades or whatever until someone comes up with a better theory as to how that was the truth and everything. Like there's a lot of different links in between like what people are trying to prove. There's certain things that are just they're really solid theories, but don't have like that last puzzle piece to fit in to kind of put the truth. And it's that within that speculation is where you can kind of like you can write stuff, you can put up historical fiction, which is the realm of Assassin's Creed. Um, I would definitely say that this is a historical fiction series. Um,
I think as well, that was recently discovered, but I can't remember. I think it was Herodotus, the Greek historian. We found out that he lied about some of the history stuff. During the great battles in Odyssey, his work,
mhm,
there wasn't giant ants. If you all believed it, I'm sorry to say there probably wasn't giant ants. So we know history can be lied. We know history
mhm,
is written by the winners. So the possibility of Assassin's Creed sequel being Mayan, in my opinion, is a strong one because even if there isn't a lot written, you can't say it didn't happen. It's
mhm.
Schrodinger's cat. It's the biggest paradox. We're not there. We can't time travel. So we know there's established law. We know there's a mythological side around the calendar that could be explained for the Isu 2012 prophecy. And we know we have Basim who can do some trickery with the Animus. So why can't we go to Mayan time period? That's my last question. What's stopping the next game from being the final mythology game in a quadrilogy from one till the next game that focuses on the 2012 prophecy and how humans figured it out?
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of we have that question as to like whether or not Ubisoft would do it, and that's kind of just to see. We'll know what matters to them is like the probability of the sales and the marketing and everything being favorable if they go to that civilization. Like how popular, how trending is it for them to go there? And then once they make that decision to do that, like how is it justified within the lore? We know they'll find a way to make that, and we're kind of coming up with theories as to like how in the lore that connects. um and yeah, I think it's interesting to like try to figure out different ways that this could connect to Valhalla. I like your theory that Basim is going to make some revelations about the Mayan calendar, and we're going to discover why we should reinvestigate all of that, and how it pertains to the current apocalypse that's going on in the Assassin's Creed game. Because I think, what did they say, another solar flare is coming or something?
Um, this is quite a big spoiler, but solar flares are always going to happen. Time is broken, time is
Mm-hmm.
repairing itself. But the problem is, we can't find out how to stop it because the reader has never been smart enough to look at timelines where it failed and how did they survive and move on. Instead, they always look at simulations for how to stop it, which is why with Layla's sacrifice, we may finally get an answer how to stop it by monitoring time simulations where we don't stop it, where we all die. How did we stop it from dying? Because unlike the Isu, we humans will leave records for other humans. The Isu kind of left us in a lurch with technology we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
You give a primitive person a lighter, they're not going to call it a lighter, they're going to call it a magic stick.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially the problem that Isu's had for years. They can give somebody a great big glowing apple of Eden that can bring reality into existence by will. They're not going to see it as a tool for science. They're going to see it as a tool of magic. And maybe human intervention needs to come forward to find a way forward. But
Well, maybe, yeah. Maybe I'm thinking like they left these devices in the hands of humans, knowing that eventually some would rise up and try to control the other ones with it. And then, they could come back centuries or millennia later and point their hypocrisy to the other people that rebelled against them and be like, this is, you're just doing exactly what we did, and you were and you rebelled against us for it. Like, there could be some kind of strategy they have there to kind of maybe they're just they're leaving this without context to people and just kind of being observed, being like voyeurs of human nature to see how easily people are corrupted or something. I crap, and I lost my other point that I had. I was just kind of caught up in the humor of that. What else were you saying?
I'm just about to say you've just beat my theory.
Oh.
I always had a joke that this save system is a sleeper cell system, and in a future episode, I'm going to talk about instruments of the first will. No spoilers. And maybe that the reason they left all this big E2 tech is once the sleeper agents woke up, they've got the right weapons and warfare to take over the world. You never know.
Yeah.
That sounds terrifying. That's scary.
Yeah, maybe they were, because like a lot of things in Assassin's Creed, like a lot of human innovation is kind of the credits taken away from human innovation and kind of put in the hands of Isu. But maybe it's just the fact that they were waiting for their like, are you saying they're waiting for their tech to be advanced by humans trying to invent new ways to conquer one another, and then they have even better technology by the time they wake up? Because that could be interesting.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you're getting it. If the instruments of the first will, this is just a tad bit for a future episode, can bring back Juno, where
Hmm.
the furthest the East were able to bring back the dead was the Shroud, which instead got someone's consciousness trapped inside, and the Anaqua, who brought back one of the Egyptian Isus in the story of Horus and somebody else. I've lost it. But it doesn't seem that they were ever able to get permanent resurrection. But the humans have made it possible to steal a consciousness out the grey and make it human.
Hmm.
Imagine what the humans could do if they broke a sword of Eden or an apple of Eden. Imagine if they were accidentally magnified its power by 10. Like, the Isu just getting some goodies here. They're like, right, 15 years nap, my apple of Eden's now better by 1,000,000. Would have took us 1,000 years to do it. They did it in 100. Let's take over the world.
Yeah, it's possible that's the way the series is going, and that they are trying to point out that this is part of the Isu machinations. Because also, what's happening is they are seeing, we're seeing as the series goes along that the assassins are kind of turning their eyes away from the Templars and back towards like the Isu as kind of being um, these unjust rulers. So it could be that they're trying to wait for humans to wipe each other out with their advanced technology and then take it from them, or diminish their power. But it could be that the assassins were able to turn enough people against the Isu that they could wake up and be in a war that where the humans are on an equal footing with them because of the assassins or something. Like, that could be the direction that they're going with the series, but I don't know. I know we're reaching close to like an hour in our podcast. There were a few points that I wanted to make on like my of stuff that I came across when like looking at the different Mesoamerican civilizations that might pertain to, if you'll allow me.
Okay, how about we do this so we don't reach too long? Quick
Okay.
fire round.
Okay.
How fast can you sum up all these points? Because I am actually dying to hear them.
Okay, I can sum them up pretty quick. One of the things that I know we were discussing when we were discussing doing this podcast, you did bring up, or you were bringing up like the connection between Valhalla and how they could do a Mayan sequel, and I was thinking, okay, well, the big thing with Valhalla, in the end, is the Yggdrasil, the world tree, and how that's like an Isu technology device. And I was like, there are like world trees in every culture, and I was like, I do know I saw one in Mayan mythology, and what I found out when I was looking through the book that I was looking into is that the world tree for them in Mayan mythology, there's four trees holding up the four corners of the world, and one of those could easily be Yggdrasil. And they also have one in the center of their world that kind of works in between as a bridge between the heavens and the underworld. And this wasn't the first time I heard of this because, of course, Yggdrasil is like the same as that. And then what I was also way back when I if you ever read like Grimm's fairy tales and stuff, they'll have like beanstalks, like Jack and the Beanstalk, and one of them has like a well that kind of goes to the underworld. Anything that travels between like our plane of existence and the heavens or the underworld is known as an axis mundi, which means like the center of the world. And we know that our world like pivots on an axis, so like that's one of the reasons why trees are kind of so sacred um, in different cultures and everything. So yeah, there could easily be like another version of Yggdrasil or something similar but more important over in the Mayan civilization that would cause Basim to travel there, or for them to try to look up someone's roots in that civilization and kind of go back through that character. That was one of those theories. Um, I was also looking into the civilization because the Mayan civilization is apparently predated by another civilization called the Olmec, which Aztec and Mayan are very popular, and a lot of people know about them because they were around when the Spanish came and conquered. But the Olmec died out long before, and the Olmec are credited with giving a lot of things to the Mayan and Aztec culture that influenced them, like their art style, their calendars, their corn. They irrigated like the first corn. Like when they were showing pictures, the first thing that you noticed about the corn was that the one they started off with looked nothing like corn, and then they irrigated it. Everything kind of worked through selective breeding until you get a plant that you can make the most out of, and that's how corn came about. The Olmecs are known for having their giant god heads or their giant king heads, which are like stones carved into the shape of a head or into someone's likeness, and they had a lot of those, and it's theorized that those were made to commemorate their kings, but there could be some kind of like Isu significance to that. Also, the only thing I could think linking like the Wrath of the Druids DLC is the fact that I know you said that you were excited for it because of the werewolves. And when looking at the Olmec civilization, the video that I was watching talked about how they had found carvings of like these little babies, but they have like were jaguar features. So as a DLC in this new game, they could have like were jaguars or something. And I was just thinking it'd be interesting to have like your protagonist like go into a village as part of a DLC and not know what's up, and then kind of everybody's like hidden and cloaked, and then kind of they make a noise and discovered, and like everybody turns around and like they all have like jaguar faces, and even some lady who's holding like a baby, like the baby has like a weird jaguar face, and they're just kind of like, uh-oh, like what did I stumble into? I was thinking
It's terrifying.
yeah, there's a ton of potential for some interesting DLC. And if you just expand beyond not just the Mayan civilization, but into other, like just like how Valhalla was like mainly in England, but it expanded into Ireland and Vinland and everything. It's like you could easily have it based in the Mayan period, but then go visit other areas. I think that would be interesting too as a DLC, knowing that the Olmec um, would have died out by the time that your protagonist is existing and living in the Mayan Empire. They just kind of on some kind of rumor or intel kind of just go and visit this village where there are people like rumored to disappear or something, and find a village full of were jaguars. I think that was my last point. I don't know if there's anything we can point to as far as like the first god that I thought that could have been an Isu that we would probably bring up, because I didn't even think of what you were pointing out as the calendar goddess becoming an Isu, and that pointing to how we got access to the calendar, because that's a really cool one. I was thinking of like in the Maya have a god called Kukulkan, who's like one of their most popular gods, and the Aztec have the same god by a different name. He's known as Quetzalcoatl, but in both cultures, those are gods that are snakes, giant snakes with feathers. And of course, there's one of Loki's children, Jormungandr, is a giant snake. He's not reputed to have feathers like the Mayan and the Aztec portray him, but it could still be a link, I guess. Um, there's also these different gods of the underworld. Like in Aztec mythology, you have Mictlantecuhtli. He's the lord of the underworld. His wife is Mictlantecuhtli. And interestingly enough, like apparently she is the origins of the modern day Santa Muerte, who's a prominent saint in like Mexican culture, but she's not recognized in the by the Catholic Church because they feel like she has like very pagan roots, and I guess like apparently reasonably so, because the only origin people can find for her is that she's linked to this Aztec goddess. So that could be something they could work on. That could be something that they could turn into another Isu with like descendants. There's the hero twins of Mayan mythology who traveled to the underworlds and faced off the different lords of Xibalba. Also, I'm certain, it's prominent in their story, but I'm certain if you make the next game Mayan, it's definitely going to involve that ball game, which I can't remember the name of it, but it's that one where they have the giant eye-shaped courts, and you have to hit the ball through the hoop, and it's not just like a game, but apparently it symbolizes like the cycle of the sun. So you could easily do something with that, and that would definitely come up in a game if they were to have it based on Mayan lore. Do you have any other theories?
I don't, except I've just come up with an insane idea thanks to you.
Great, I just extended this episode like another 15 minutes.
Oh no. No, it's an insane idea, but what if spoiler again for Valhalla people, when Odin betrayed Fenrir, Loki's son,
mm-hmm.
what if Jormungandr, his other son, went into hiding? Just literally fled. And in hiding, he hid in the Mayan culture, as you just pronounced. It's two gods similar, and that's where he hid.
He just put some feathers on.
Well, we know that Darby has already mentioned that there's different cultures. There's the Northern tribe, the European tribe. I'm calling them tribes, but imagine an Aztec tribe, and that's where he's living. And Basim knows his son's hiding there, but he can't say to the assassins, "Hey, let's visit some Mayan memories, get my son's consciousness back." They're not going to trust him. So what if they say, "Hey, let me tell you a secret of how we taught the humans."
Like Loki. Mm-hmm.
Drew, so what if he's like, "So let me tell you how we taught the humans the prophecy." So all the assassins like, okay, if we can know how they've taught the humans the prophecy, maybe we can find a secret that these Templars don't know.
Trick them into thinking it was their idea, and then he's going to profit from it.
Exactly. He's got his wife, Althea. He now needs, he can get his son, and then it'll tie into my future podcast of Instruments of the First Will, because they're the only people who can bring back the Isu consciousness into human form. Loki needs that. Imagine the next trilogy is Loki getting all his family together and betraying the assassins for Instrument of First Will. That's meant to be destroyed, but we don't know it's destroyed. It's in the Transmedia. Phoenix Project was destroyed, so Juno was killed, but who's to say the remnants aren't in the background? And that is why I stay up all night. That's why I don't sleep.
Yeah. It's the stuff that keeps you up at night.
This is why Ubisoft should hire me. Oh, what should an next Assassin's Creed game be? Well, this is the law. It has to be like this. But here's an insane idea. Literally, it's perfect. It'll work. Trust me. People hate it, but I'll love it.
Yeah, Declan, I'm just like imagining now you're going insane, and you're starting to see Basim's face everywhere, and you're shouting at walls and stuff.
Oh, to be honest, ever since Basim became reincarnated, I know everyone's like swooning over Basim and his voice and his pretty face, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
how will he betray us? He's Loki. I have
Mm-hmm.
never in my life read anything about Loki where he's a good guy. I've just finished American Gods by Neil Gaiman, and Loki in there is a dick. He is
Really?
a
I
dick.
haven't read the book. I've just watched the series, and I finished season 3, and I don't think we've encountered Loki in the series. No,
Oh,
not
have you,
yet.
you will have encountered him.
In the TV series?
You will, if it follows the book, you will have encountered him.
That's
I
the
could
thing. I don't think it does too well. I think people are kind of miffed because it does its own thing. And I think
I,
even Neil Gaiman might be miffed about it too now.
I could tell you who it is, but I don't know if you want to be spoiled.
No, 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 no.
It's
We'll stick to Assassin's Creed spoilers here.
the book's fantastic, but yeah. So I just I don't know. It's for future episodes, but I am definitely on the hype train that Instance of the First World is going to be the new protagonist. It will no longer be Templars. It'll be Instruments of the First World, and that's when everyone's like, "Oh no, blasphemy!"
I I hope they do decide to go in this direction. Although I liked this one a lot, and I liked the one that you and Andrew came up with the with it going into Japan. Either one of those outcomes, and I will be very well pleased with the next game. I like all the theories that are coming out with that. Well, I like those two. I think the most. I will say the one that I didn't really care too much for is the rumor going around that the next game is going to be back in like the Third Crusade time, or yeah, it's going back to, or it's going to be set in France in like the Third Crusade, and it's like, but a lot of people are saying, or whoever was posting that video was saying that this is likely if somebody saw this leak, it's because it's for the Siege of Paris DLC and not the next game, because they, because of delays, they can't even work on the next game or something.
What I do know, and this is off topic, apparently
Mm.
the um leaked game that I discussed, I don't know, my nose blocked again, has been abandoned so far by Sophia because it was Ubisoft Sophia's project. But
Mm-hmm.
judging by all the information of how it's Crusade again, how it features King Richard,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a smaller game like the originals, I'm thinking Assassin's Creed
Oh
1
yeah,
remaster.
I remember you saying that. I did listen to your episode where you said that.
I'm always going to say, people know this, I'm advocating it. Like, we're in 2021, give us it now. Like,
Yeah.
why can't they give us Ezio Collection, Black Flag, Rogue? Every game has been put onto the current gen, pardon me, except Assassin's Creed 1.
You listened to our episode, right? Our one of, I think it was in our first episode. I don't know if it was our first or second, but we were talking about, because we're discussing the first game, and we're like, and I told Tiffany, I was like, have you noticed? She said a lot of people joke that it's like repetitive and it's called Pedestrians Creed for a reason, and I was like, have you noticed it's the only one that hasn't got a remake yet? So I, I was joking that it wasn't in high demand enough for them to make a remake for it. But are you saying, because based on like what I heard in your podcast and what you're saying now, you're saying that they will totally revamp the first game into a more elaborate kind of game and not just put it out on a next gen console?
What I'm thinking, and it's some new information, and it's why it's going to be a radical game for releases, and people will probably charge Ubisoft with pitchforks, and if they do, I won't be impressed. Um, I was thinking it's going to be a bundle, just how Assassin's Creed 3 Remaster was launched with Liberation HD. Sophia
Mm-hmm.
has worked on Liberation HD before, so the portable Bloodlines and DLC was PSP. Sophia can use that knowledge to push the DLC into a HD thing that can work. But, and thanks to 6 keys from the sisterhood for this new information, there is a ton of cut content that they will add back into Assassin's Creed 1, and that cut content was an ecosystem, which is a very RPG mechanic, but there's an ecosystem. There's missions that went missing all over the kingdom where you could do little contracts, and there's an Easter egg outside the front gate when you do the first mission after you get killed and then come back to life. You'll see a assassin all in red, and that assassin all in red is the one who betrayed Messiah and let the Templars in. But that was meant to be a quest, but that was cut. So if they bring, this is why it's on hold, if they bring Assassin's Creed 1, they're going to give us the complete collection, which will be the DLC, but also the missing quests and the ecosystem. That's what's taken them so long. They're trying to find out how to add all the cut content in the game to make the game so everyone can enjoy it. It'd be a radical shift because people will be like, this is not Assassin's Creed 1. Why is there an ecosystem? Why am I chasing these targets? When in actual fact, it was cut content that never made the cut. They just put it in like how a lot of remasters add cut content to make it better. That's just a theory, though.
Yeah, I can see them doing that. Like I was thinking as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, like they could do like the Final Fantasy VII remake, do a remake of Assassin's Creed 1. If you're saying that, or maybe you're just saying that they're going to release it as it was, just put in the cut content as it was made way back when. Because I think it could definitely, they should put it out, but with better graphics. And what I also think is that if you're talking about them doing a bundle, it should also bundle in their Altair Chronicles and Assassin's Creed Bloodlines, because a lot of people didn't play those because they weren't on main consoles. They were all on the side. And even though I don't really like the plot line for Altair's Chronicles, I think they could make it more interesting if it was not a Nintendo DS game or whatever it was on 3DS. I think they could rework that and just put all of Altair's stuff together in a bundle and release that. What do you think?
I think they could do that, but only time will tell. It's just a theory at the moment, but all I can say is I've got Assassin's Creed 1 on my computer and it holds up really well, and mine's a i5 8th generation Intel core with NVIDIA GeForce, so it's not a super strong 4K type gaming computer, but Assassin's Creed 1 holds up pretty damn well. I will admit, I've got some unedited photos from that game and they look pretty damn good. But I think that's all we've got time for. This is quite a long episode.
Yes.
But the reason why this episode's been so long is there is a ton of lore, history, and a potential caveat to jump out this ditch of European time zones and explore something new. Assassin's Creed is a historical fiction, and I will stand by my defense that you shouldn't choose history that's popular. We don't go to school to learn history that's popular. We don't read historical books or get into archaeology for just popular history. And I think Assassin's Creed needs to learn this as well. If they want to tell untold stories from the past, do it. Don't focus on what Hollywood has got in their back pocket, be it Greek, Roman, England again, medieval, whatever. Just give us a time zone in history that you can open our eyes to. Discovery mode is one of the biggest influential things of Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey because it teaches history that a lot of people don't know. And if you start steering away from Hollywoodized history locations, your Discovery Tour could help thousands of people learn history they've never thought about looking up. So I'm hoping this episode, if Ubisoft listen, shows that even if the Mayan culture isn't super popular in Hollywood, it is still a perfect candidate for Assassin's Creed because it's got some perfect history and culture for you to explore. thanks to Jarrett for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's always a pleasure. And if you want to feature on an episode or get in touch, then follow me on Twitter, AC Let's Talk, or you can email me at assassinscreedletstalk@gmail.com. Forgot me on the email then. Or if you've got any ideas or you want to be a guest, then hit me up with them links, and I shall see you all next week.